in the cycles and in all those things, we get down to, where the base of it all starts out of, and that is in the soil, we oftentimes have a confusion, I think, with soil in some ways, because soil is actually, it's a medium. It's by itself. By itself, it'll grow plants, but it's not alone. Like I say, all cycles cross each other, And what you find inside the soil is benefited because the trees are breaking down, they're turning into it. The rocks are being broken apart, they're getting into it, But these are supporting more than just one habit. There's like, billions literally of, different things going on, from mycelia to bacteria. So, like one of the beautiful things about soil is soil houses mushrooms, fungi. Fungi be growing all through the forest. And we know that. We see it under the soil, and we see, images of the, the little fruit piece that comes up that we usually call fungus. It's the mushroom top. It's part of the spreading its spore and being able to move on business. But there's more that we don't realize, and we're just now starting to understand as we watch nature, and that's that, every tree, every plant, and most of the bacteria and insects are all actually plugging into that that fungal web that's going throughout the ground, almost like we do with like the World Wide Web. So they're literally every day plugging into the internet, and they're like, okay, so what's going on over in that area? Is there any poisons moving this way? Is there better nutrients? If I let my seeds go, which direction would be the best? Should I wait for the wind to? And they're looking at all of these things through that area. So soil is not a lone thing. And unfortunately sometimes we get to talking about soil like it is its own separate being, but it's not. It was made so that it could bring life, and not bring life just to plants, but to be able to bring life to everything that was going on inside that soil web. And that, is so much to do with, nematodes and the worms and the frogs that are, living across it, the plants that are feeding out of that water, how that's holding that business. But it's also just important about that relationship between each one of those. Soil by itself wouldn't be soil if it wasn't for the rock breaking down, if it wasn't for the tree breaking down. And it needed to tell the tree how to be so that it would come to its aid. And it went to the tree's aid, and the tree went to the soil's aid, and they worked together in that. When we're stepping in as farmers, what we're wanting to do is go, okay, obviously the earth was made to bring forth life into us, so how do we be a part of that? How do we mimic that in our own piece of the earth that we're given to be over? We don't want to just say the soil's fine because it was supposed to be fine. We want to say, okay, this soil's fine, but what connections have been broken? What connections used to exist that aren't working now, and how do we build those connections back together? And that might be as simple as, covering it with a thin layer of some kind of light mulch, grass mulch, anything, leaves, those things all work great. And then that doesn't just keep the moisture into the ground, but now that allows for the worms who are now into that moisture and the like, they start to move over. They're like, this is cool, or this is a nice spot to be in. They bring trails, and they bring their, stuff that they drop off of them, which is then picked up by bacteria, which is then all excited about that. So then the bacteria grows strong, which then feeds the fungus, and the fungus goes, yay, me, and it grows strong, and it spreads out, and that spreads nutrients to the plants, and the plants go, woohoo, and then they pass it on to the trees, and so on and so forth. So when we're building soil, we have to remember we're building a universe that exists under our feet, not just that element of dirt that flies in the wind, without any one of these pieces, they're not a whole, and they were created to be a whole. The base of permaculture comes down to this idea that, we're trying to figure out how nature works and use that. And in order to do that, we have to look at, what is nature? And nature isn't just like an object that sits still in one point, but it has things that are happening. Seasons are like cycles in there. So, one season the tree grows up and it puts out the leaf so that it can, be able to soak in the sun, but in the winter it doesn't have enough energy to do that. It knows it doesn't have enough energy to do that, so it goes into a dormant state, and it drops its leaves, and the leaves fall down on the ground, and then they start to pick up leaf mold, and they break down and they hold down the leaf or the weeds and the things that are growing around the tree. And then this helps to kind of create a natural mulch for that tree. So in this cycle of fall to spring that we're going through, we're seeing that the tree wants to, for one, reserve energy part of the time. It's wanting to be mulched. It's wanting to reduce the weeds that are growing in that area. And permaculture is looking at that, but on a broad scale of all of the things that are connected to that in that cycle. So, how do the birds interact with the fact that, the tree goes through these cycles? How are the deer, how are all of these things interacting? How are they crossing our property? And how are those beneficials to us? Or how are things that, we should leave alone and let that cycle run? Or is there things that we can get into and we can organize that cycle so that, I'm growing nitrogen fixing plants that are, they don't really serve a purpose. I'm not eating them anyways. I'm not selling them, but I'm dropping them and I'm putting them on that bed that is growing all my food, that is growing all of those other things, So they're getting to that point where people are starting to look at the more of the broader picture and how are each one of those cycles working together, because no cycle circles in like a singular circle. This cycle here has a cycle that comes into it and it connects to it, and this cycle comes out and connects into another cycle of something, whether that be how the nutrients are moving or how the mycelia grows or whatever the cycle might be. There's no cycle by itself. They're all, and that's why you hear a lot of times in permaculture talking about the edge effect, because everything meets at some point at an edge across those cycles. And if we learn what's happening in that edge, we find the most productive part of nature. In order for us to look at it, I guess as a whole picture, is that these things have to work together. We were developed to have a relationship. As we come and I've tried to be a loner. It doesn't work. We were meant for that. A lot of people say we were meant to have a relationship with the divine. All of these things have always called us to relationship, and that's what we're trying hardest to understand when we get into farming and the like, is that all of these things are a relationship going on. It's not one solitary island, the fungi, the nematodes, the bacteria, the soil, and everything that grows upon that has developed this relationship together. And they're working together because that's what they've done for millions of years. We've only been on this planet a short time. We're just now learning how to have relationships with each other. But what we want to do is we want to learn how to become a part of that relationship with the earth. All of those things that are going on, all of the nematodes, all of the fungi, all of the things, we want to be thankful and graceful to them as much as we are to the soil, as much as we are to the plants, so that they understand that all of them are included in this relationship. And it's not just me and the plant having a relationship, or me and the dirt having a relationship, or me, the dirt, and the plant having a relationship, but I am a part of trillions of life forms that are all working together at the same time.